Welcome back to The Pulse. With me now here is Miss Tricia Braxton, who just won the election for Nevada State Board of Education. Miss Tricia Braxton, thank you for joining.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here.
So before we dive into the questions, please tell us a little bit of a background about yourself.
Sure. Well, I'm Dr. Tricia Braxton. I have a doctorate in public policy from UNLV. I've been a resident of Nevada, of Henderson, Nevada, for 21 years, having moved out west from New York, where I was a New York City police officer for 8 years and had a fantastic career, but chose to move out west to raise my family. Of all places, Las Vegas. Well, my parents retired here. They're also retired New York City police officers. And like many New York City police officers, wanting to move out west, to save some of that state income tax. And it was also very important for me to raise my children around their grandparents. So that was the reason for the move. Once my daughters began to go to school and grow up, I navigated education, meaning I was that parent who was active in the classroom, working with their teachers, volunteering my time, like many other parents, especially for holiday parties and stuff like that. But then I wanted to be involved more, and it was recommended to me by some of the teachers to get more involved in education and pursue substitute teaching, since this was a major career change for me. I wanted to explore more and visit different schools, and being a substitute teacher allowed that opportunity to flourish. I decided to pursue my master's in urban leadership development and then public policy, and I now work for the University of Nevada Reno Extension.
That is wonderful accomplishments of you, Ms. Braxton.
Thank you. And it is okay for you to call me Dr. Braxton. I worked hard for that degree and really happy and proud to wear the title.
Very wonderful, Doctor. What does State Board of Education do? And give us a map of where District 1 is.
Absolutely. All right, so the State Board of Education is the accountability arm of the Department of Education. Every state has its Department of Education, and so the Department of Education, having the State Board of Education as its accountability arm, receives information from our school districts. In Nevada, every county has a school district. We have the Clark County School District, we have Washoe County School District, but every county has its school district. We also have a charter school authority in addition to a corrections arm for school board. In addition, we have a Board of Regents, and the Board of Regents oversees the Nevada System of Higher Education, which includes UNR, University of Nevada, Reno, UNLV, University of Nevada, Las Vegas, Desert Research Institute also.
Nice.
CSN, Truckee Meadows, and so there are 9 institutions that are a part of the Nevada System of Higher Education. And so that organizational structure, if you will, includes the Department of Education at the top with the accountability arm, the State Board of Education, and then our school boards and our Nevada System of Higher Education.
Those are wonderful categories of schools, Doctor.
Yes.
Does the Nevada Board of Education have any jurisdiction or power over county school boards?
So the State Board of Education sets policies, if you will, for all of our school boards, and policies will include things like curriculum, right? Choosing the right curriculum or appropriate curriculum. It's really the North Star of education. When you consider start times, for example, what start times would be for our students, that comes from the State Board of Education. In addition to policies regarding parent engagement, also things like building design. That's also approved by the State Board of Education. There are frameworks that are also considered when we consider things like developmental delay standards or ages, right? At what age would developmental delay engagement be required, right? So this is very important, as the State Board of Education is the North Star of education for the state.
Very wonderful, Doctor. Since your election, what changes would you like to see in the board?
You know, it's funny. I get questions about changes a lot. And I think it's important when a person does take a position to get a better understanding of what is to come, what are some of the current issues at hand, because there are iterations of policy development. And those iterations include an evolution, what's considered, what inputs about education were necessary, what's being looked at, what policies are in place, and has there been enough time in place to get information, to get data, to say that something is working or not. You know, if every 4 years we change a direction without reviewing what has worked and what doesn't work, and to change something just to change something, are we doing ourselves service? So I'm more involved in looking at what has worked, what needs to change, and if something does need to change, how, right? And that's a process. It's a very important process to consider. Right now, there is a review of start times, appropriate start times for school. There's a lot of data that's been collected.
Yeah.
So I'll be able to look at that data and then provide input. I don't have that information now. So I don't want to make an assumption about something that isn't already in the works. Now, what would I like to improve? I'd like to improve a greater understanding of what the State Board of Education does. There is transparency with the State Board. Minutes are provided on their website, as well as any resource materials provided for the meetings. The meetings are public meetings, so I think a great job is being done there.
Yes.
But you know, and I think the current leadership with our superintendent, Joan Ebert, is fantastic. But I would like to know more of what's the behind the scenes. How are those decisions made? Right?
Yes.
So I come in with an open mind, ready to provide my insight into what I've been able to explore in my personal experience in my career, but also through the lens of safety, questioning, providing questions about what teacher support really looks like and how we can help our teachers feel more, not just heard, but implementing some of their best practices. In addition, student success.
Yes.
Right? So, you know, what does student success really look like? Is it just getting A's and B's in class, or, you know, providing that classroom reinforcement, if you will, or is it preparing our students for the jobs of tomorrow? And that could be working with our students so that they go to higher education.
Yes.
And they get their college degrees, their professional degrees. That would be fantastic. For some students, it might include going through apprenticeship programs. And so I'm excited about amplifying the work of our apprenticeship partners and building that up more. In addition to some students choosing to go to either the military or becoming entrepreneurs on their own.
Yes.
Right? Student success can mean many different things.
Yeah.
As long as the end result is really promoting our young people to be productive citizens to society later and feeling that they have a sense of accomplishment. You know, it's interesting. Our students are very much aware of the economic conditions facing, you know, our society.
Yeah.
Can they afford to live independently where they've grown up?
Yeah.
That's a real concern. Can our teachers afford to live independently and well in the places that they've been asked to work.
Yes.
Right. So these are the issues that I bring to the State Board of Education. Not that they haven't been addressed already, but this is my focus. So when you ask the question about change, there's a lot of research that I want to do and a lot of information that I want to know so that teachers are supported. I can do my part to make sure that their voices are heard and best practices are implemented, to make sure that our students receive the resources that they can, and also that our community can be a part of this wicked issue. I call it a wicked issue because it's so complex, to improve education for our state.
Yes. And then to add to your point, because you already enlightened us about some of these issues, is that Nevada is one of the lowest in education.
Yes, it is.
I think there really needs something to be done instead of just the word change as in quote unquote. And then like now we got like this thing about this issues of public schools that has become too politicized for political gains by certain groups of interests.
Right.
And instead of just babbling about it, there should be something that should be done to take action instead of saying that it's bad, there's no solutions. And I think of the fact that public schools can also be concentrated, but there needs to be more programs and more funding for programs to really help uplift the system of the public schools. I also come from a public school too. And then plus, what this I think they want to massively privatize education too. That's also the problem. You got this charter schools and you got this private academies that are like, thriving. And we got this, certain groups of interests or this, well-off to do individuals about bragging about this homeschooling kids or like don't bring them to public school. And then they bring them to this, private, well-off to do academy, which they have all the money to afford to go there. But, what about the other students there who cannot afford this, kind of systems? They have no choice but to go to these, public schools.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I've worked in a private school locally here.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic curriculum with grammar and so forth. But what I can tell you, having experience in public schools and private schools, and sending my kids to public, private, and charter schools, I have a wealth of information. I really can compare, all three based on my experience because this is part of my lived experience.
Yes.
Right? I pretty much know what I'm talking about when I make certain comments. And so what I can tell you is with public school, there's a full enrollment. It's open enrollment, so it's not selective. And that's one of the concerns that individuals may have between public, private schools. Charter school, there's a public component to that, right? So when I do say private public schools, it does have this charter school component. Any school that requires state funds or federal funds, if you will, that would be considered public. Totally private is tuition funded only, and then there's a foundation that might help fund the school. So having this opportunity for choice is important. And when I say choice, I specifically mean choice for the whole. With public school, there is no selective enrollment. You have everyone participating in public school. The public school standards should be not only high, it should be the best because you have an opportunity for everyone to thrive. We should also move to attract the best teachers because it's a public school setting where you have the great diversity of our enrollment. And with that, there are so many opportunities within our public school settings for students to thrive. It's the type of schooling that public school was set up to be. Private schooling can be more themed. It can be more geared toward a particular ideology.
Yeah.
Same with charter schools. And so with that, you don't have the different types, the diversity of thought, right? Where students can take advantage of reviewing different types of ideologies and then making their own decisions. And so there are perspectives, varying perspectives on the different types, but what I'm most concerned about is education, and education for all, and equitable education for all. And so what that looks like is making sure that we have the best quality of curriculum, best quality teachers, that our teachers are respected and compensated adequately for their work. Public schools should not be a place where you go to if you don't have resources.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It should be a beacon of hope. It should be a place where you have a multiple wealth of education and education resources, right? So I know that I'm speaking from a particular ideology, but not through Pollyanna glasses, right? You know, in a place where we have world-class restaurants and world-class sports and world-class, a little bit of everything.
Yeah, variety, categories.
Right. Why can't we have world-class education, public education in Nevada?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I think it was Assemblywoman Claire Thomas, I believe, who said that we need a Las Vegas to be like the education capital.
That's right.
Why we have an entertainment capital, we have a sports capital, we have everything capital. Why can't we have an education capital?
I believe that.
Yeah.
I believe that, you know. And so it does involve listening to our students, right, and listening to our educators. There is a participatory leadership approach to education, where it's collaborative and requires feedback from multiple parts of the whole. A top-down approach doesn't really help the space of public education, I believe, because of the diversity, right, of our home, of our communities. And we can be rich in offering, you know, the best type of support for our teachers.
Yes.
When there is constant curriculum change, for example. Well, you know, it's something might be offered 1 year. And teachers will go through professional development to learn the curriculum, but it's only over time to know how effective that curriculum can be, right?
Yes.
Considering teacher competency with curriculum, considering students and their understanding of how to use different curriculum, and then assessing whether or not this is effective and how effective is it. Now, if something is grossly in error, right, you get rid of it. Okay, you know, if something's really not working, you get rid of it, and you have to be able to do that. But you also need to be able to measure what success would look like for a curriculum, and that's definitely, when you consider testing, right, that's one part of it. But then there's this other part, and it's the whole picture of the child's experience.
Yes.
Right? A test by itself is not a full indicator. I mean, I've woken up not really ready for the day. I'm sure you can say the same thing, right?
Yes.
You know?
I have observed that too.
Right, you know, and so then imagine being confronted with a test that's going to determine whether or not, you know, you get into the next grade. Just that one
As
test.
the saying goes, there is like a lot of answers there. It doesn't have to be just one particular answer. There are answers that are wrong, but there are answers that are right, but doesn't mean that there's one answer. There's a lot of answers.
Could be how it's interpreted, sure, you know, but looking at criteria, you know, how do we measure success for our students, and are we meeting the criteria that perhaps other states are meeting, you know, that put them at the top of the list, right? That's really an issue. But we have a major problem in our community with attracting and maintaining some of our best teachers.
Yes.
Compensation is an issue. And when you have teachers who may have been in education 7 years, 17 years with master's degrees, making only a couple $100 more than new teachers coming in.
Yes, of course.
That's a problem.
Yeah, and then also, like, there's now this issue that I've also been stumbling into a lot of this, headlines in our local news channels that, like, the schools are becoming more overcrowded and they keep building new houses, but there's not enough space for schools.
Right? I mean, I feel that in my own neighborhood, you see communities being built, going up, and it seems like the last things to be built are the schools and fire departments.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a perception that I have. Maybe there's something different, but that's just what I see, and I've lived here for 21 years. School design is important, and
Yes.
I'm eager to understand more of what that process is. We have schools in Clark County that have 3,000 students. That's a lot. Depending on the design of the school, that could provide a perception of overcrowdedness or space.
Yes.
So that's interesting. I'm not an architect,
of course.
right? But that's something
just
to consider.
That's like your analogy of it.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've noticed some high schools having various corridors where they can have 2 lunch periods, and it doesn't seem overcrowded. Yet another high school, all the kids, let out into one courtyard area. It's overwhelming.
Yes, of course.
Absolutely.
Where I come from, and over there, it's about, where I come from in the Desert Oasis High School. It's like, I was shocked to see there, like 10 years later after I graduated, that like I'm seeing there's like this new extension of like this, courtyards and like this barriers, so like this new rooms, like temporary rooms in these parking lots, and over there near the grass fields and near the parking lot of the teachers' parking lot in the other side. And, we got near in the basketball court area, another room being stacked there like temporarily. It's like we expounded our classrooms even to the outer doors. Yeah, and plus, like, when I was there, I mean, during my first year, I was the first freshman to enter that school. When it first opened, it was only like about hundreds of us, and then it grew to about close to 1,000 the second year it came, and then it kept growing.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and then when I went back there about 5 years after my graduation, it was still maintaining the same. And then 10 years after my graduation, that's like, oh my gosh, what happened here? There's like this new subdivisions, and like we got this new overcrowded extended rooms outside the school complex. It's like, what happened here?
Right. No, do you like it? Do you like the new design, or
the new design? I'm still used to the old design, like from when I was still during my high school days.
You're familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. Now, we do have some schools, however, that put up fencing, right, to separate community.
Yes.
And I heard from one student that created a feeling of isolation. Where the school was now no longer within a community or part of a community because of this fencing that had gone up. So that's something to consider when we talk about overcrowding or crowding issues.
Yeah. I think because of like what happened, like recent violent incidents in schools, like whether it's mass shooting or brawls that have happened there, I think they put a lot of barriers in like the schools, like for the students and like for everything. It's like the schools have completely closed and have kept their doors closed, especially like for those who want to, visit those schools, especially those who are alumni who came from that school. It's like, I'm not visit there anymore. It's now, why has it become hostile to like, returning students or like those who are like alumni, thing.
Environmental design is something very important to consider when addressing safety.
Yeah.
And we have to consider that. There have been a slew of mass shootings, unfortunately, with our schools, with our students. So that is a very serious thing to dive into and to research more.
Mm-hmm.
Safety is paramount.
Yeah.
And you cannot have a learning environment, a suitable learning environment,
Mm-hmm.
unless safety measures are considered first.
Yes. Yes. And so one thing I will bring up before we move on to the next question is then when you mention teachers, I'm with the Filipino community, and we got lots of teachers coming in from Philippines who are like temporary teachers or like overseas workers. And one of the things we do is I used to be one of the organizers for the welcome teachers party under the J1 visa, which is like the teacher's visa, I think, working visa. And we give them prizes, gifts, and things for essentials, for their temporary stay or wherever they're staying at. And one of the things that I hear a lot from community organizers, my associates and the other teachers, is what to do about that, pay raise thing, and what to do to from a 5-year contract extend it to at least 10 years, and at least they save that money, and then they can bring back that money to Philippines for their families.
So that part is not under the jurisdiction of the
Yeah.
State Board of Education.
Yeah.
But I do have friends who are here on J1 visas,
Yeah.
Teaching, and that is a 5-year term.
Uh-huh.
What I hear most isn't so much about the salary, but the safety
Yes.
component, right? And what that looks like in the classroom. Not so much from our teachers who teach elementary school, but our teachers who teach middle school and high school.
Yeah, especially some of those are part of the culture shock.
Exactly.
There.
That part.
Some of the kids there might not behave like the kids here, even though that it's normal for kids to act, rowdy.
The hormones are changing, the
Yeah.
whole bit, and that's a whole thing. But there are cultural shifts.
Yes.
And that's what we've spoken about a bit,
Yes.
The question of, why don't the kids just come and sit down in the classroom and listen to the... Well, listen, I'd have to say that that's an issue beyond the classroom. It's definitely evident and seen in classrooms, but we have to look more at what our societal norms and expectations are.
Yes.
And consider that from a larger perspective.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, doctor, is this your first time running for office?
It
or
is.
This... Oh, okay.
It's my first time running, and so it's an interesting story.
So, doctor, tell us about your experience as a candidate to be in this election cycle.
Well, this was my first run for office, for any office, really, political office, if you will. I am the recording secretary for the Clark County Democratic Party, but this was a different race, right? I chose the State Board of Education because of the complexities of the state board and having an understanding, having attended state board meetings, for example, of what it entailed. And with my background, knowing that I could provide my experiences and skill sets and lived experiences to decisions that needed to be made. The state board it's comprised of 11 members, but only 4 of the members are elected. And each of the elected members run to represent a quarter of Nevada's population. And so the state of Nevada has 4 congressional districts, and the 4 seats on the State Board of Education mirror those congressional districts. So District 1 for the State Board is the same as Congressional District 1 for Dina Titus, where you have East Las Vegas, Paradise, Whitney area, Henderson, all the way down to Boulder City. It's a huge area. I think it's, of the geographical locations, it might be the smallest, but it's the most densely packed of population. So it's huge. My strategy, I managed my own campaign. And I'm happy I did so. I was part of Emerge. Emerge is
Yes.
a training camp for Democratic women.
Yes, I heard of Emerge Nevada. That's great.
Yes, I'm a proud graduate of Emerge Nevada, and I was equipped with tools necessary to run my own campaign. It's just that this was my first campaign and this is so huge, but I felt ready to take on the challenge because of my education experience, having graduated from Howard University with a political science degree, urban leadership development from UNLV, and now my doctorate in public policy. I knew that my campaign was not going to be easy. I had one opponent from the beginning, so we didn't have a primary. In a nonpartisan position, a race, where you have only two candidates, you bypass the primary and you go straight to general. And my opponent, notably, was the senior advisor to a group called Moms for Liberty. And I knew that I had to have more of a grassroots effort for my campaign. One, namely, because many people had no idea what the State Board of Education does. And it would always be confused, 99% of the time, be confused with the Clark County School District.
Yes.
Or the Board of Regents. So most of my campaign included educating people on what the State Board of Education does, and then letting people know about me. I've not been in the political scene, and so this was new. People had to know who Tricia Braxton is, what my experience is, and that was a huge part of my campaign, right? That education piece about the State Board, who am I, and why does it matter that I'm running? I had a small team of people, including my fiance, my daughters, close friends, just a part of doing what was needed to be done to reach people. And so oftentimes I was at events, 2 events a day, one time 3 events, right?
Yeah.
And that worked by, showing up early at one event, showing up late at another event, and showing up very late at another, but being present, right?
Even though that, I know you were very busy with going to one place to another, and so in spite of I know you missed some invitations of some events, but you did the very best to give yourself some more exposure to various groups of people.
Thank you.
And it seems like you had a very wonderful team to get you elected this election cycle.
Yes, it was very small but mighty team,
Yes.
And we worked really hard, knocking on doors. That was really important. Showing up at events, just being present. There were times when I'd go, grocery shopping and talking to the person behind me in line, and we would strike up a conversation, and I'd give them a card.
Yes.
Going to the beauty supply store, I'd give the person behind the counter
That's
a card.
That's a fantastic way of reaching out to people.
Absolutely. Because I'm a voter too, right? And so I managed my campaign from the lens of a voter. And I can tell you that one thing that I appreciated last election cycle was when I was able to meet the candidate, and just exchange pleasantries sometimes, and just let them know, hey, I live in your area, and when I was asked, okay, what are some of your concerns? That meant a lot to me. And so I wanted to provide that for my own campaign. But, it wasn't easy. And as I mentioned, I managed this campaign myself, my fiance, he was fantastic. We were going everywhere, whether it was putting up signs and almost being electrocuted ourselves, or just showing up, at a park, because we knew that there were parents there. There were people who may have just had questions about the State Board, just had questions about education, and then delighted to know that there's actually an organizational structure,
Yes.
right, to education. That was fun. So it became fun for us, but also necessary, because I ran this campaign from the lens of being a voter.
Yes.
You know, up until the last day, election day, I was campaigning. You know, I was campaigning, I was canvassing, I had my t-shirt on, I had my flyers on, my family had their t-shirts on. My fiance was able to convince voters going into, you know, getting ready to vote, you know,
Yes.
that I was the right candidate. And when I say convince candidates to vote, down ballot races, way down ballot races, like our judicial races and our education races, I usually experience a drop-off in voter participation. Because people may not know who those candidates are, right? You know, with judicial races and education races, there is no political affiliation next to our names.
Yeah.
So when people say, oh, I'm going to vote, you know, my ticket, my party, whether you're Republican or Democrat, you're going to vote your party, and then you're going to come to the judicial races and the education races and not know who to vote for, because there's no political affiliation.
Yes.
So I really had to make an extra effort to be out front and centered and present. I had a win rate, I believed at the time, based on previous data for how individuals voted and population. You know, I had a win number of about 90,000, right? So with the area that I told you about, the District 1, it includes, I believe, 15 assembly districts, 7 Senate districts, and 3 school board districts. Right? So everyone's using the term district.
Yeah.
But that's what District 1, Congressional District 1, and State Board of Education District 1 is comprised of.
Yes. Coincidentally, it's in that same area.
Right. It's Congressional District 1 and School District 1, they mirror and encompasses a lot. So we had to be present and available and up until Election Day.
Yes.
Right? Through Election Day until 6 o'clock.
Yes.
Election Day.
Yes.
You know, and I think that made a difference. And so my opponent received 101,000 votes, 101, I believe 101,000 votes.
Yeah, somewhere around that area.
Somewhere
Last
around
time
there.
I checked.
Yeah, 101, 800 and something.
Because my dad and I were following up on like the Nevada Secretary of State website.
Yes.
And we keep watching those votes keep getting counted in, especially those who were like by mail.
Yes.
While the first ones were the in-person voting from the day of the election all the way to the early voting.
Right.
And then comes the mail-in ballot, keep flowing and flowing there.
And so, you know, I'm watching numbers from the presidential race. I was watching numbers for the school board races. And you know, out of the gate, you know, I had a 19-point spread, a 19-point lead.
Yes.
And it didn't dawn on me that, wow, that was a huge lead.
Yeah.
Didn't register at all. My fiance was telling me, yeah, this is what you have. He's showing me the phone. You know, we're looking at the same site that you were looking at with your dad.
Yeah.
And it didn't register because I was still on this move, you know, this drive to get more votes, let more people know, you know, this is an important race, and so I was still concerned. I wanted to see like a higher number, but after everything was said and done, you know, I told you what my opponent received, but I received 151,208 votes, and I am grateful for every single one of them.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
And you really, you pulled it off really well.
Thank you.
Yes. Dr. Braxton, last words from you. What would you like to say to viewers, voters?
Well, I ran this race to represent my district, to represent everyone in my district. I appreciate the 151,208 votes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Know that I am here to work hard for you, to work hard for my kids, my nephew, your kids, our families, to make sure that Nevada is a premier place to live, an ideal place to live, where we have education to be proud of. Thank you.
Dr. Braxton, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Tricia Braxton, candidate-elect for Nevada Board of Education, District 1.